Hello Internet, and welcome to my live reaction for Black Butler, chapter 184. When we last left our heroes, we were still back in Baldroy's flashback within a flashback, and actually we started the flashback within a flashback within a flashback to right before the native assault on his village, as we get there's like a attempt to sort of justify the natives' actions that the narrative I felt wasn't super invested in by commenting that the railroads just kind of cut off their food supply, and also the army had been over-hunting buffalo, so they were sort of desperate. But the narrative doesn't really humanize them beyond that. You know, we get to Baldroy's house in the second flashback, the night of the attack, and, you know, his wife and child are still murdered. His wife maybe was raped, it kind of looked like. They didn't go into a lot of detail with that, but her dress looked kind of pulled down. So maybe that happened, I don't know. And Baldroy is just sort of in a daze afterwards. The house kind of collapses around him. He is attacked, he's like shot in the back by a native's arrow. And then he like takes it and kills the man with it, commenting that he can't really plant roots here anymore. So, you know, there were some good, like, there's some really good stylistic choices going on last chapter, but it was also way too short, told us only information we already knew, and just the race aspect of this whole storyline is not really working for me. But anyway, let's dive right on into chapter 184, The Butler Wandering. And we open on Baldroy taking out a pie as Finian, Mayrin, and, our cover is Baldroy taking out a pie, while Finian, Mayrin, and Sebastian watch. He found his way to a merry battlefield. I guess this is somewhat later when he has some kind of cooking skills. Excuse me. But anyway, we're then done with the second layer of flashback, thankfully, and we are back in flashback layer 1 of the aftermath of the attack on the manor. As Baldroy tells Sebastian, "I've been rootless since then. I fought many battles against the natives. I searched up and down for battlefields. A true expert at killing people. That's exactly what I am." And Sebastian listens to all this. He's not terribly impressed, which makes sense given who Sebastian is, but still. You know, Baldroy's like bearing his soul to the man, and Sebastian just kind of stands there implacably. Anyway, Baldroy continues, "I lived in order to kill. I wasn't simply avenging my enemy. Anyone who appeared in front of my eyes was my enemy. I left my small village. I wandered all over America and got covered with blood and mud. I rolled around the wars. I killed, and my fellow soldiers were killed. And I finally realized why the head of our village said things aren't that simple." Going back to what happened last chapter, Baldroy, as I recall, initially proposed to just like share food with the natives if they were hungry. And the village elder responded, "Things aren't that simple." Anyway, Baldroy thinks happiness, ordinary, a quiet life, those things never existed in the first place. And I do love, you know, we had these images of Baldroy's happy life and the same kind of shattered glass motif we saw last chapter. Our ancestors' dreams were their nightmares. Our expansion, their invasion. Our coexistence, their exploitation. And their justice was... And he flashes back to his wife and son's death. And we are seeing, though, you know, Baldroy is, like, there's at least an awareness that, like, you know, it's not like Baldroy and his family treated them, or Baldroy, like, it's clearly not saying that the white settlers treated the natives so well and all they got in return was murder. You know, it's pointing out what the settlers saw as you know, either with the coexistence line of like, you know, friendly relations, and what the settlers kind of saw as empty land, was clearly seen by the people who lived on that land as a threat. So there is at least, and there still is like that attempt to sort of, you know, explain the natives' actions, explain why they made the choices they made, and not just treat them as monsters, which I do appreciate. But Baldroy sort of thinks on that, "But I was unable to forgive. I couldn't stop fighting. If I survive, I can kill more of them. That's all I've thought about." So yeah, even if, like, I'm trying to find the right words to describe Baldroy, because, you know, this is sort of a fraught topic, in case that wasn't very clear. And in case you couldn't tell, I am distinctly white. And so I'm trying to pick my words very carefully here to describe Baldroy. Because I don't even think... I'm trying to find the right words to even broach the topic. I don't think he sees himself as being in the right necessarily. You know, he's aware that, like, what his ancestors did caused huge problems for the native people, but also in his mind, you know, even if that explains why they took the actions they did, he can't just forgive that. That still is his family. Even if, you know, his ancestors hurt their families, he's not really worried about the morality, is I think my final sentence on this. You know, he's aware he's not really a good person here, but he's still doing it anyway, if that makes any sense. Anyway, Baldroy goes on, you know what happened after that? And Sebastian just looks at him. I've got no supernatural powers. I can't fly. A farmer's son somehow survived and became the invincible private soldier. And in the end, I tried to devour a fellow soldier's corpse so I could continue fighting. And that, as I recall, is right where Sebastian found him. I was totally insane. And Sebastian just stares at him, still not really impressed, almost. Is that truly so? You're the most ordinary human in this manor. You fear death, as humans should. Well, I suppose in this manner, he might be the most ordinary human there. But that still doesn't make him anything except totally insane. But okay. You must be the only one in this manor who does. I recruited you precisely for that reason. And we, interestingly enough, see, you know, we see Ciel, of course, but Mayrin and Finian, we see them from before they joined the manor. Finian is still bald from where he was in that lab we learned about a decade ago or so at this point. Mayrin still has her short hair that we saw in her time in the mob or whatever she was in. Anyway, Sebastian then turns to leave. Now let us stop cleaning up and go to bed. You need to rise early tomorrow. And we see the hall at this point is somehow sparkling. At some point, Sebastian speed cleaned mid-story. When did the place become clean? Baldroy kind of looks off at Sebastian as he walks away and thinks, he's insane. And then we come back to sometime later. Mr. Sebastian, I think this is Finian's line. Old man Sam brought us this week's food, who was the same guy who first told him about the attack several chapters ago at this point. God, this flashback is so fucking long. Finian declares, I'll go help unload the cart. And Mayrin chases after him. I'll come with you, I will. And Sebastian turns to Baldroy. Baldo. Yeah. It's the chef's job to manage food, ain't it? And then we cut to Sebastian and Baldroy who come out to greet Sam. Someone, I'm not quite sure, it's probably Sebastian, tells Sam, thank you for your work. How are things in the village? And Sam tells him, now that you mention it, a dairy cow on my farm gave birth to a calf. And Finian's just overjoyed. Wah! Congratulations! And Sam tells him, I hope it'll grow up to be like its mother and produce lots of milk. And then we see, I think we've seen this kid before with Sam in the past. I'm not quite sure what his name was, though. Grass grows well around here because the soil is fertile thanks to Lord Earl. We have nothing to worry about. And that, I think, kind of takes Baldroy back to his own farm. That, especially there was the line last chapter that sort of ended the chapter of him looking at the burning crop fields, like, nothing will ever grow here again, or I'll never be able to plant roots here again. This feels like it's in contrast to that line. Anyway, Baldroy notes, that's so. Then, I look forward to milk that's really sweet and nutritious. And the kid just grins up at him. Leave it to us, sure. And Baldroy just smiles down. Oh, didn't when Baldroy see this kid earlier in the flashback, he was sort of taken back to his own son? Because I can definitely see Baldroy sort of seeing his son in this kid. Then Baldroy notes something above him and sees Ciel looking down on him from the window. And Baldroy thinks back to what Sebastian said. You fear death, as humans should. And Sebastian, just turns around. You must be the only one in this manor who does. And he sees the smiling and laughing Finian and Mayrin, and then there's this, I love this hard cut to them on the night of the attack, bloodstained, and having just murdered a bunch of people. But then Finian just declares, Mr. Baldo, look at this carrot. It looks funny. And we see the carrot's split, it's got legs or something. As Finian notes, it's grown legs. And Sebastian just, scolds him. Come, Finny, stop playing and carry the food inside. And then we see Baldroy sort of what seems like the end of this flashback, though I've said that before. But this has a very final line in a movie kind of thing. I'll plow fields all my life like my ancestors did, and live an ordinary, happy life. And we see, this image of him back on the farm. That'll never come true. But for their sake, too. And we see his son and Joanna, and that might have been his father, though I don't know if we ever met his father. No, that's the soldier who died. I'll set root here, and keep on living. And I do love this whole page here of him, walking towards Sebastian and Finian and Mayrin. The light shines on him. It's a really good panel, even if, I have my problems with this whole flashback, both in terms of pacing and in terms of content. And then we're back to the present at long last. And I will say, something I've noticed is that I'm not entirely sure or how do I phrase this? So what started this flashback off was Ada and Baldroy sharing trauma, right? Ada talked about the lives lost in Crimea, I think. It's been a while since that chapter came out. Which got Baldroy talking about his own past. The problem is, I'm not sure what the manor has to do with any of that. I'm not sure why the manor was the focus of this story, is my big question. If the focus was his time in the wars, his home being burned to the ground, if the focus was on that stuff, I could see how that connected to Ada. I don't know why Sebastian and CL connect to Ada. But anyway, Baldroy wraps up his story with Ada. Both you and I lost what was precious to us, but we survived. But you're different from me. I was driven by hate and kept taking lives. You overcame your sorrow and saved many. So again, even this final point isn't really tied up to the manor storyline at all. Maybe the fact that he's still killing people while working for CL could kind of fit in with that. But his killings for CL are very different than what we learned earlier in the chapter, that he was just desperate to keep on killing. Earlier on Imgurs would have page numbers, but his whole speech about, I was unable to forgive, I couldn't stop fighting, if I survive I can kill more of them, that's all I thought about. That's the sort of thing that seems to tie into this line with Ada, not the fact that he's still killing people much more emotionlessly under CL's orders. I don't know. I was not a fan of the flashback. I don't think any of us really were fans of the flashback. But even down to the very framing of it, just doesn't quite seem to click for me. Anyway, I was driven by hate and kept taking lives. You overcame your sorrow and saved many. Rumors that you're the miracle healer were true. And he holds out his hand to Ada. Ada seems to almost tear up. I wish I knew this was going to be definitively the end of the flashback. So I could have read the chapter that got us into the flashback beforehand, so I could have a bit more context as to what was going on around this story. I know at one point wasn't I'm blanking on his name, the Chinese man. Lao. Wasn't Lao planning to kill Ada because that was the job, and there was some conflict between Baldroy and Lao. And of course Ronald Knox is here. As we see in our last two panels, Ronald Knox has his Shinigami book open and is listening in on the conversation. But I forget what exactly led to this conversation, and so I'm not quite sure how I should be reading this final scene. I mean, we definitely had the sense that Ada was very much a good person, even if she is perhaps unknown to her giving blood to the Undertaker, right? That was part of what was going on. I would apologize for my confusion, but honestly, the fact that it's been 6 months, six months or more since we were in the present is really all Yana's fault and not my own. But yeah, anyway, this chapter, I'm very glad we're done. That was I think, obvious, but I'm very glad we're done. And, we continue to see Yana is a good storyteller when she wants to be. There's plenty of bits here that, again, divorced from the horrific pacing, are really good. I still love the shattered glass motif. I like sort of Baldroy's ruminations on, we talked about coexistence with the natives, but, that's never really what it was. He doesn't quite bring this up, but, his idea of, the U.S.'s idea of coexistence was the natives don't ever bother us at all, and we can bother them as much as we want, in a sense. And I appreciate, as much as I have problems with the native storyline in general, I appreciate Baldroy aware of his own flaws. He's aware that, his wife and child's death, is in a sense a form of justice. I'm trying to find the exact right way to phrase this. Because it's a contentious issue. It's a messy, I'm not sure if that's the right word. It's a very particular issue. I'll leave it at that. And one that I am, as I've said in past videos, absolutely not adequately equipped to talk about. But I'm already reviewing this, so I gotta at least try my damnedest. Yeah, it's just a lot. But again, I do appreciate just the acknowledgement that, how Baldroy saw the relationship between the white settlers and the natives wasn't really how they saw it. And also may not have even really been true. Our ancestors' dreams were their nightmares, our expansion, their invasion, our coexistence, their exploitation. That's a real good line. It's a good reminder. And then Baldroy, how do we view Baldroy now? I know this is Black Butler, and there aren't really any good people in Black Butler, but there also aren't really any characters who were driven to specific to it's not quite genocide, Baldroy's goals in his past, but I don't know. Something about the racial nature of Baldroy's crimes feels like a step higher than we've seen in the past, if that makes sense. I might be wrong. I might be mistaken. You might disagree with me. I don't know. But it's definitely more uncomfortable, at least from my perspective, than a lot of the other awful things you've seen people do. There's a difference between, Mayrin being, a mob hitman to Baldroy, joining an army specifically to murder as many people of one race as he could. And again, he's not really being presented as a good person here. And the Baldroy we see in the present is kind of trying to move past his own sins, to try to be better than he was in the past. Baldroy's bit about, you're different from me, you are, to Ada in the present, you are better than me. He doesn't say better, but it's clearly what he means. I was driven by hate, you overcame your sorrow. He's aware he was in the wrong. I don't know. It's a real thorny, it's a lot. It's a lot for Butler to really handle. And again, I'm still just not sure it handles it well. I think there is a potential for a good story here. I'm just not quite sure it really ends up working in the end. But anyway, we're back to the present. We're now no longer in a flashback in a side quest. We are just in a side quest. Which, sometimes you gotta take your victories. And Ronald Knox is in the background listening in. I'm not quite sure what the general consensus as to what Knox's goals are. Because the Shinigami are all anti-Undertaker, right? And Knox, more than anyone else, should be kind of aware of what Undertaker is up to, given that he's the only person here who's not human. I don't know. Knox is obviously someone to keep an eye on, and I really hope we find out more about what he's up to sooner rather than later. But yeah, make a long story short, we're back in the present. We're still on a side quest. Still on the second side quest of 4, because, good lord, there's just so much to this arc. But, we are getting somewhere, I think. So yeah, I'm going to leave this video off here. Hope you all enjoyed the chapter and the video itself. If you did, feel free to drop me a like or subscribe. Do whatever makes you happy, And as always, your life is your own, okay? Bye!